Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh my. Are you light? Are you enjoying? Hi everyone. I am Sawtooth Frank, and you are listening to the Soft Serve Podcast. This episode is for the week of March 1st, 2026. And there's a lot of stuff going on this week. We have a war with Iran, and probably most importantly on the global stage, my birthday. That's right. Yours truly is turning 52 years old. And we're going to get into all of that right after the intro music. The Soft Serve Podcast.
You're a loser, a scumbag, lower than scum. You are a absolute zero. Absolute zero. Lower than scum. A scumbag. Absolute zero.
Oh yeah, baby. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't forget to play the Absolute Zero version of our theme music on my birthday week. After all, I am the original Absolute Zero. Oh yeah, baby. Here we go. Yeah. Well, folks, I have to say, I wish we were going into the week, into my birthday week, with better news. As you all are probably aware, unless you're living in a hole, or a bathroom filled with classified documents in Mar-a-Lago, you're probably aware that the United States went to war with Iran. That's right. On Saturday, February 28th, the United States of America launched attacks against the nation of Iran. And in those attacks, the United States and our attack partner, Israel, have killed the Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's supreme leader. So, I'm not going to rehash everything that the news has been covering this week on the war. Just some of the things that sort of stand out to me. And then I'm going to give some reflections on how I feel about this war in general. As some of you know, if you've been listening to the podcast a long time, I am a veteran of the United States Army. While I did not serve in combat, I was attached to the 2nd Infantry Division, and I did a tour of duty up on the demilitarized zone of North Korea. Again, I never served in combat. I've never been shot at. I've never had to shoot anybody. But I have been around and situated in the culture of the infantry by virtue of my attachment to the 2nd Infantry Division, right? So I spent a year with those folks. I lived with them in the field. I drove around South Korea doing field maneuvers with them and lived with them in tents for over a month, right? So, I feel at least maybe more qualified than the average person who has not served in the United States military to comment on these matters, right? So, if you don't like the fact that me, somebody with a progressive-leaning viewpoint, is being critical of this war with Iran like I'm about to, you can go fuck yourself, okay? I have put in the appropriate amount of sweat and tears, I think, to have an informed opinion. So let me just say that ahead of anybody telling me that to mind my own business and I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we said that the United States and Israel have killed Iran's supreme leader, the one, the only Ayatollah Khamenei. The Associated Press is also reporting, as of Monday, March 2nd, when I'm recording this episode, that the Iranian Red Crescent Society puts the death toll so far at over 500 people on the ground. Presumably, those are mostly Iranians. And the Iranian Red Crescent Society, I believe, well, I'm not totally sure, is sort of the analog to the American Red Cross, right? So they're an aid organization that tries to help people out during emergencies and wars. Let's see, the Associated Press is also reporting that the United States and Israel struck an Iranian girls' school with a barrage of missiles and killed 160 Iranian schoolgirls, which is absolutely terrible, right? So this war is already off to a terrible start when it comes to civilian collateral damage. Now, I haven't heard anything or read anything in the news to indicate why the United States attacked that Iranian girls' school. Let's see, news outlets are also reporting that so far, again, as of Monday, March 2nd, 6 U.S. service members have been killed and more seriously wounded. 3 U.S. jets, F-115s, I believe, F-15s have been shot down in a friendly fire incident by the Kuwaitis. So that's objectively terrible. The good news is all of the pilots in those F-15s managed to escape from the crashes alive, so that's good. And the other thing I saw reported in the news, as the attacks were starting on Saturday, February 28th, what was Donald Trump doing while American troops were fighting and eventually dying? Well, according to CNN, Trump was mingling with millionaire donors at his Mar-a-Lago Palm Beach mansion at a political fundraiser.
Fake news.
Isn't that nice? Now, Trump and his cabinet had also set up a war center of sorts at Mar-a-Lago. So, the report that I read on CNN was that, Trump was spending time with his millionaire donors and then bouncing over to his war room to, quote, monitor the attack.
It's all fake news.
And I've seen a picture of Trump sitting at the so-called war room table, and he looks barely alive. So I don't know how much monitoring was happening.
You're not a nice person.
I don't know for sure, but my guess is that it was just a photo op they took.
Wrong.
Of him sitting at a table so they could claim that he was monitoring the attacks.
Fake news.
So, as a result of these attacks, we're seeing war beginning to spread across the Middle East as Iran begins to counterattack all of the nations around it, and the people and the nations that it perceives as being allies of the United States. Global oil prices are now spiking, and surprise, surprise, defense company stocks are spiking. So, as is always the case in these situations, the war profiteers are profiting already.
It's all fake news.
Right, and it'd be interesting to see how many of Donald Trump's cronies are invested in these stocks related to national defense and war production. Right? And not just Donald Trump's cronies. All of the politicians that we have in Washington. So here we go again, folks. We are now embroiled in another war in the Middle East. And the news outlets are reporting that Trump has said, as of today, when I'm recording this, Monday, March 2nd, that he expects more U.S. service members may die, because that's just what happens in war, folks. We have to accept it. Our sons and daughters are going to die, and this war will continue at a minimum for weeks more. And we're just getting started. Getting started at doing what, I don't really know, because the objectives of this war so far remain totally unclear. Neither Donald Trump nor anyone in his cabinet have made a case for why this war is necessary beyond what I see as just paranoia propaganda.
Fake news.
Sort of these obtuse, unprovable statements that Iran was developing missiles that might be able to someday hit the continental United States, and that they refused to give up their nuclear program. So here we are. More assertions by a government, our government, that this is a war that we need to fight. And here we go. We have started fighting it. Now, I need to say, I am not a fan of the Ayatollah Khomeini, Iran's now very dead supreme leader, and I am not a fan of religious theocracies, which Iran was. That being said, I have to point out that this war that we have started with Iran is illegal and it is unconstitutional. Now, you might be asking yourself, Sawtooth, why is this war illegal? Why is it unconstitutional? Okay? And there's a couple of very simple reasons for that. The first being, only Congress can declare war. Under Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, it's very clear. Only Congress has the power to declare war or authorize the use of military force. Right? So we've had a number of lawmakers already, Congress people, okay, U.S. representatives and senators come out, members of both parties, rightly criticizing these strikes against Iran as being unauthorized by Congress. Congress did not authorize this attack or declare war against Iran. Senator Chris Van Hollen and others have come out and said that, pardon me, my throat is bothering me and I've been trying to ignore it. So I'm going to take another sip of my tea. My tea from Trader Joe's that's supposed to be like coffee. So just bear with me. I'm going to take a sip. You can listen to it. Okay. I don't know how long that's going to get me. Anyways, Senator Chris Van Hollen said that the action against Iran was, quote, illegal and unconstitutional regime change, end quote. Because Congress was not asked to authorize it beforehand. I agree with that. Another reason that I believe that this war is illegal and unconstitutional, right, is because of the War Powers Resolution, which was passed in 1973, which requires presidents to consult with Congress before introducing U.S. forces into hostilities, if possible, and to withdraw forces after 60 to 90 days without congressional authorization. So it is my belief that Trump and his administration violated the War Powers Resolution, which requires them to consult with Congress.
It's all fake news.
Okay, so the other thing that I think is problematic here, and I talked about this before a little bit, is there really does not appear to be an imminent threat by the nation of Iran that would have warranted this attack. You know, it was just a couple of months ago that Donald Trump bombed Iran. I think this was back in the summer of 2026, and supposedly completely obliterated their capability to produce nuclear material.
You're a damn liar, man.
So what is it? Did we completely obliterate their capability to produce nuclear material and develop nuclear weapons? Or are they on the verge of being able to develop nuclear weapons?
Come on, man.
And I don't believe for a second that Iran had developed or was close to developing intercontinental ballistic missiles. Not a chance. So, again, no imminent threat from Iran that would require this attack, this illegal and unconstitutional attack, right? So, another thing that I think is problematic here, and it will not come as a surprise to you that I did not vote for Donald Trump, not when he ran for president the first time, and I did not vote for him the second time, nor did I vote for him the third time.
You're not a nice person.
Okay? But Trump, during his third campaign for president, his most recent campaign, which he won the election apparently, made a number of promises about not engaging in foreign wars and putting America first.
Fake news.
And, Trump and his allies repeatedly made the claim that his foreign policy was going to be one of non-entanglement in new Middle East wars. Right? This was a big thing that he said. No more foreign wars.
Wrong.
And as we've heard, I think from a number of people who have since left the Trump orbit, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I cannot even believe I am invoking her name on this podcast, the former Trump ally, now turned Trump critic, she very, I think, accurately points out that this war with Iran contradicts promises that Trump made to stay out of foreign conflicts and focus on domestic issues.
You're a damn liar, man.
Now, we all know that campaign promises and rhetoric are not legally binding, right? But, I think I wouldn't blame most Trump supporters if they feel betrayed by Donald Trump. He promised not to get involved in open-ended military interventions, and that's what this is going to be. Right? Now, of course, the MAGAs out there, right, are blindly supporting Trump on this, right? The people who are still in the cult of Trump and in the Trump orbit, who are saying that no, this is putting America first, right? Because they believe everything that Trump says. They are saying that Donald Trump is not lying when he says that Iran had missiles that were close to being capable of intercontinental reach, and that they reconstituted their entire nuclear program in a matter of 6 months.
Come on, man.
So, this is very, very disappointing. It has feelings like George Bush and Dick Cheney going to war with Iraq, right? Claiming that we would be greeted as liberators. And those of us who remember that war will know that it turned out to be a disaster. A a pit of quicksand that we got stuck in and took us a long, long time and many years to get out of. So anyways, I think the other thing that really bothers me about this, and sort of an ironic component of all of this, right, is that I've heard some rhetoric from the maggots saying that we had to go in and kill Ayatollah Khomeini and achieve regime change there because Iran was a cruel religious theocracy, right? And I say that's ironic because we have a bunch of maggot politicians running around Washington, D.C., openly advocating for the United States to become a Christian theocracy. Now, in my mind, the problem is not with having a Islamic theocracy or a Christian theocracy or a Jewish theocracy or a Buddhist theocracy or a Taoist theocracy or a Zoroastrian theocracy. The problem is with theocracy. It doesn't matter what kind.
Jesus Christ.
The problem is the theocracy. So you'll forgive me if I think all of the maggot politicians running around D.C. advocating that our own nation become a Christian theocracy and celebrating the destruction of another theocracy feels kind of like a load of horse shit. Right? And so, some of these people running around Washington, D.C., sound a lot like religious nutcases. Right? They're making claims that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. They make calls over and over again to restore biblical values in our government.
Jesus Christ.
They make appearances at events hosted by groups promoting Christian nationalist ideas. Right? And, they generally are running around advocating for the integration of Christianity into public life. And that is bullshit. It's the same kind of shit that we saw under the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. What else have we done over here in the United States to push us closer towards theocracy? Trump has appointed 3 Supreme Court justices who have very strong religious leanings. Right? And the court's recent rulings have accomplished some theocratic objectives. They've expanded religious exemptions, right, from the law. They've allowed public funds to flow to religious schools. And they have weakened, right, church and state separation. And they have the Supreme Court of the United States of America in their rulings has moved the United States of America and our government closer towards an endorsement of religion, right? Weakening the strict separation that's required by the United States Constitution.
Jesus Christ.
Right? So it's happening here too. Other things we've done here in this country to push us closer towards a Christian theocracy. Again, we talked about the Supreme Court, but their decision in Dobbs versus Jackson overturned Roe versus Wade. Okay? And while the opposition to abortion is not entirely and exclusively religious, it is very strongly rooted in conservative Christian theology. So, again, it's hard not to look at that Dobbs versus Jackson decision as pushing us closer towards a Handmaid's Tale type of situation. And then sort of, another thing that the Trump administration has done to try and push us closer towards a Christian theocracy, in my opinion, is by issuing executive actions that expand religious exemptions, right? And he's also created the White House Faith and Opportunity Initiative, right? So all of these things have prioritized Christian organizations over other types of organizations. They've weakened LGBTQ non-discrimination protections in some areas. They've elevated religious claims above other civil rights.
It's all fake news.
Right? And, I don't think I can bear to go through another winter season listening to maggot Christians cry and complain that they're not being allowed to celebrate Christmas. It's like, since fucking when? Everywhere you go over the winter holidays, it's nothing but Christmas. Nobody's taking Christmas away from you. Nobody's waging a war on Christmas. Right? Other things that Donald Trump and his administration have done to push us closer to what I think is their goal of a Christian theocratic state is attacking education in favor of their preferred religion, which is Christianity. Trump has expressed support for school prayer, specifically Christian school prayer, and has offered support for increased protections for Christian school prayer. He's offered support for public religious displays. He's offered support for expanding vouchers for private religious schools. So being able to take public money and spend it on private religious schools. Right? And it's hard not to see this as state support for Christianity.
Jesus Christ.
Right? And I'd say all we have to do is look towards Donald Trump's 2024 and, the upcoming 2026 campaign and policy language for more sort of clues that, he and his administration would love to see a Christian theocracy, in my opinion. Right? So they repeatedly have framed the United States of America as being under attack from anti-Christian bias. They've made promises to defend Christianity, right, which is not under attack and has never been under attack. They support proposals that align with socially conservative Christian policy priorities.
Jesus Christ.
Right? And it's hard not to see that their focus on protecting Christianity rather than all religions, right, signals their preferential treatment for Christians and their desire to create a Christian theocracy here in the United States. And so I come back to my question, right? Like, do we think a Christian theocracy is somehow intrinsically better than a Islamic theocracy? Do we think if they are successful in establishing a Christian theocracy, that the people who hold power in a Christian theocracy won't be throwing people off of roofs who they find to be sinful or evil? Do we think that they won't arrest people for not being Christian? Do we think they won't take advantage of women in the way that we see happen in a classic Christian theocracy warning tale like The Handmaid's Tale, right? I think all of that stuff is entirely possible if they're successful in establishing a Christian theocracy. And so, I don't think that a Christian theocracy is somehow fundamentally better or more moral than an Islamic theocracy.
Jesus Christ.
We have a document to guide the way we govern our nation. And that's the U.S. Constitution. Not the fucking Christian Bible.
Jesus Christ.
Not the Old Testament. Not the Quran. Not the Bhagavad Gita. Okay? Not whatever the fuck other thing that you find spiritual inspiration from. I'm sorry if the U.S. Constitution is boring. That's what we fucking have! So anyways, here we are. At the start of another war. Nobody's really sure why we're fighting it. And I don't feel good about it. Gonna be honest with you. Okay? And I promise you, I'm not going to focus a lot on this going forward, because what's the fucking point? Right? It's hard. It's hard not to descend into hyperbole and exaggeration, right? But I can't imagine we're not sort of at the cusp and the dawn of a new global conflict, a new world war. And it's hard not to think that this is exactly what Donald Trump and his administration wants. Right? There's been lots of speculation that they are starting this war to distract from the ongoing Epstein Files scandal, to draw attention away from that. There's been speculation that they're starting this war to lay the groundwork for declaring a national state of emergency so the Trump administration can attempt to take over our upcoming national elections in November 2026.
You're not a nice person.
So it's hard, it's hard not to be thinking about all of this stuff, and that we are at the beginning of some dark times. But that being said, I'm committing to you, my dear listeners, not to focus too much on this stuff as we go forward. I feel like as shit gets increasingly bad and dark, we're going to need to be able to turn to content to take our minds off of it, if periodically. I'm not saying stick your head in the sand. I'm not pretending that my stupid little podcast, with a handful of listeners is going to make a difference by not focusing on the war and not focusing on Donald Trump. But, for my own fucking mental health and sanity, I'm committing not to do that. But it didn't feel right this week not to acknowledge that the war with Iran started, my thoughts about it, etc., etc. Okay? So I also mentioned at the start of the podcast that I am turning 52 in a couple of days. Now, let me give myself one of these, okay? Like, I'm, on the one hand, enormously grateful that I am alive and here at almost 52 years old. There's still a couple days to go, so who knows, I may not make it. It's possible, you never know. Like, one of the things I focus on all the time now as a 52-year-old, right, is any kind of pain in my chest or my abdomen.
Ouch.
Or my neck, like, immediately sends me into self-obsessive spirals about, am I having a heart attack? Am I having a stroke? Do I have some other sort of horrible, chronic or acute disease that's going to kill me? Right? Cancer, ALS, MS. Just my mind is like constantly on my fucking health now. So I don't think that's going to get any better, honestly, because it feels like every day I'm encountering a new health problem as I get older. So, but all that being said, I am still very grateful that I am here and I am turning 52. Okay? Now, I thought it would be fun for the purposes of this podcast to talk a little bit about what it was like on the day I was born, right? Back in early March of 1974, with today in 2026, in March of 2026. Do a little like pop culture time machine, right? Sort of compare elements of pop culture back and forth between 1974 and 2026. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a 2026 versus March 5th, 1974 pop culture time machine. Okay? That should be fun. So here we go. Let's go do that right now. Let me dive into that. So, and there's 10 of these, 10 pop culture snapshots. Okay? March 5th, 1974 versus 2026. All right, here we go. Okay, the number one song on the charts for March 5th, 1974, which was my birthday, was Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks. Now, this is described as a sentimental ballad about saying goodbye. It's actually one of my favorite songs. This is so weird. People describe it as being dramatic, emotional, and slightly depressing for a newborn birthday soundtrack. Perfect for me, I will say. And if you know this song, you know what I'm talking about. We had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun, but the seasons are all gone, and the blah, 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 blah. Let's see. In March of 2026, March 1st, 2026, we, of course, now have streaming. That is the dominant form of music delivery. So the number one stream song changes pretty frequently. But at least on March 1st, 2020, I don't know what it is. It doesn't say here. Well, just that. Well, what is the number one song right now? Let's look it up. Number one song. Oh, it's not typing in. Oh, my keyboard's not on. That's why. All right. Number one song in the U.S. right now. Let's see what it is. All right. I don't know. It says the number one song right now is a song called Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley. I don't know what the fuck that is, but I'll take Seasons in the Sun over that. Although I don't fucking know. There's all these different streaming channels that all have different number one songs. So to what I was saying before, I don't know if there is anymore a number one song on the charts, right? The world has changed. That I can say with confidence. Okay? So when I was born, it was Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks. Great song. Go listen to it. Right now, who the fuck knows what it is? Depends on what streaming service you listen to and blah, blah, blah. All right. Price of gas. In 1974, in March of 1974, I think the price of gas was around 55 cents per gallon. And this was back during the gas crisis, the oil crisis of the 1970s. There were long lines at the gas pumps, right? And on certain days, only people with even license plates could get gas. And then on other days, people with odd-numbered license plates could get gas, right? Maybe that was back when license plates were only numbers. I don't know. License plates have letters in them. License plates can be words. Right? This is making me realize how much the world has moved on. In 2026, right now, gas is between $3 to $4 a gallon, and it's going to go way the fuck up because of this war with Iran, right? Now, if you listen to Donald Trump, gas is below $2 a gallon somewhere in the fucking country, but I don't believe that for a second.
Come on, man.
Right? I haven't seen gas below $2.50. And it's creeping back. It was creeping back up before the war with Iran. So I think we're going to be back up around $5 per gallon pretty soon because of this war.
Fake news.
All right. In 1974, the average rent was about $150 to $200 per month in the United States, right? So you could afford rent and food at the same time. Imagine that. Now in 2026, the national average for rent is $1,700 or more per month. Right? So, you can afford rent or food, not both. Good luck trying to afford a place to live and feed yourself. In 1974, we had rotary phones, right? Remember those long cords that stretched across the kitchen? And now in 2026, I don't think we have hardwired phones anymore. Certainly not rotary phones. We have smartphones, right? We have AI assistants on our phones. People don't even make phone calls anymore. Everybody just texts. Crazy. In 1974, the phone was attached to the wall. In 2026, we're attached to the phone. And I think we're getting dumber because of these smartphones, to be honest with you. Ironically. There's been lots of research and speculation into the ways that smartphones and social media impact human cognition and human interaction. And I think the smartphone has diminished our capacity for communicating and interaction. And it's one of the reasons why social media in particular, why we're in I think, one of the most divided political times in our long history. I think you really kind of have to go back to the Civil War when you were, when you had the abolitionists fighting the slavers, or back to the 50s when you had the people in Congress who were going after people that they perceived were communists in America, right? Before you can find political divisiveness like we're experiencing today. So, it's not good. I worry, honestly. I worry about my own smartphone use, my own engagement in social media. I don't think it makes me a better person. Honestly, I've talked about this before. I think it makes me a worse person in a lot of ways. And I go through periods of trying to draw down my social media engagement. But we'll see. Hopefully I can keep it up. All right. Televisions in 1974, right? They were these basically hundreds of pound boxes with rabbit ear antennas. We had 3 to 5 channels, right? Everybody sat around, the TV and watched the same shows. Now in 2026, everybody streams everything. We have gigantic flat screen TVs, basically movie theaters in our living rooms. We have hundreds of choices of channels, right? And we can basically watch whatever we want on demand. I've said it before, I really enjoy the shows that are releasing on a weekly basis still. Like, it gives you something to look forward to. It feels like a little event. That's what I like. But that's not the way things happen anymore. Let's see. Technology at home. In 1974, there were very few or no personal computers, I think. IBM mainframes filled entire rooms, right? And now in 2026, with these smartphones we were just talking about, most people are walking around, carrying more computing power in their pockets than NASA had during the Apollo 11 mission, right? And what are we using those powerful computers to do? Watch cat videos and fight with each other on social media forums. Fucking crazy. We could be doing so much more, people. All right, video games back in the 70s. If you wanted to play video games, right, you went to the arcade. That's just how it was. In 2026, we have games on our consoles or on our computers. These hyper-realistic games like Call of Duty, where we can shoot at each other and play war games. We have open world games like World of Warcraft, right? And the graphics are amazing, right? And people spend a lot of time now playing games, just sitting at home. Before, and if you remember the arcades of the 70s and 80s, they were these giant smoke-filled rooms that were kind of mysterious, and I enjoyed going to them as a kid, but we don't have that anymore. Video gaming is not sort of the thing you do in a social aspect anymore in a room full of a bunch of people. Cars have changed a lot since the 70s, right? Since 1974, the year I was born. Right? Back then in the mid 70s, we had big, heavy sedans. They were all steel, right? No airbags. Seatbelts, if they existed, were optional, right? There weren't any laws requiring people to wear seatbelts. In 2026, we have hybrid and electric vehicles. Our cars have touch screens, right? Bigger than our 1970s TVs. Our cars, beep at us and drive for us if we accidentally begin drifting into another lane. I actually think the improvement in cars is a really good thing. I think it's the way automobile-related deaths have gone down is a great thing, and one of the examples of the powers of government regulation and how it can do good for people. All right, so let's see, what else? News and news consumption has changed a lot since the mid-70s. Back in 1974, the news was on, at 6 o'clock, right, or whatever time it came on. People got their news through newspapers, delivered by a newspaper boy or newspaper girl, right? Thrown on the porch. We had national anchors like Walter Cronkite. And after that, Dan Rather, Leslie Stahl, Peter Jennings, right? All those people. And in 2026... we have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news cycle. It never ends. We have the cultural and information morass of social media. I talked about that before. The fucking garbage. Right? AI slop is everywhere. We're all content now. Right? We are the news. Okay? All right, let's see. Sort of the last bit of pop culture time machine comparison we're going to do is about media and music. In 1974, we got our music on vinyl, 8 tracks, right? You had to physically flip over a record or physically flip over the 8 tracks, if I'm remembering, reversed automatically. But in 2026, right, we don't physical media is pretty much dead. Right? We stream everything. We stream our music. Our playlists are created for us by algorithms. You know, God forbid you listen to one Coldplay song, the rest of the day you're getting Coldplay rammed down your throat by your fucking phone or computer. Now, interestingly, in 2026, vinyl is back. People love the vinyl. I go into Barnes & Noble or other stores and I see record players and vinyl everywhere. So, that's good. And, you know, we'll probably need the vinyl after World War III and the nuclear blasts and electromagnetic pulse bombs destroy all of our electronics. We're going to need analog equipment, like record players. So I'm going to give the resurgence of vinyl one of these. Okay? All right, that's our pop culture comparison. Okay? And I did that as a little bit of a birthday reflection for myself. What was it like when I was born and what is it like now? And I think it's pretty shitty right now. So there you go. All right, folks. Look, it's been a dark episode. I know. I'm sorry. That's where my head's at this week. That's where my head's at for my birthday week. But, you know, knock on wood, knock on the podcast table. I'm going to make it to 52. I hope to make it to 53. Okay? If you're a new listener of the podcast, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. Okay, we also have a Substack. Sometimes I publish writing there. So you can follow us in all of those places. You can leave us feedback or comments there. You can email me at softservepodcast@gmail.com. Okay. Our website has a contact form. You can go to softservepodcast.com, find our contact form, fill it out, and you can get in touch with me. Right? Lots of fun ways to interact. Now, that being said, I know you're not going to, right? We got one or two people who interact with us, and to those people, I want to say God bless you. You have no idea how much joy that fills me with to get your comments and reflections and questions. So, if you like the podcast and you want me to keep doing episodes, you know, drop me a little red meat in the way of an interaction or two. Okay? So, I say to you all, you know, have a great week. Yeah, I'm going to try to celebrate my birthday. I'm going to try to celebrate turning 52. I'm going to try not to be depressed about it. I'm going to keep my chin up and just try to be grateful that I'm still here, still shuffling the mortal coil, and I'm still able to say to all of you, my dear, precious listeners, bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.